at the mall and talked about life. There's nothing special.
Oh my God.
Roderick, can you explain what you're doing in this photo?
That's not me.
That's not you?
Nope.
They really think they can get us, they checking and drip when I flip up the building. I'm ready, I'm ready, I'm ready, I'm ready to take on the world, I'm ready. You can't stop me now.
Hey guys, Blue100 back again with another video. So we just watched Spider-Man No Way Home, and in my opinion, it's really good. It's not perfect, but I really loved it.
I, up to now, keep replaying the clips on YouTube every single day, every single morning, or whenever I have the time. It is that good, and I don't watch Spider-Man all that much, but I really loved this movie.
Yeah, and don't worry guys, we won't get into spoilers yet.
Just yet.
So we're just gonna do non-spoilers first. I was kind of thinking of doing it separately, but since the movie has been out for a couple of days already, and it hasn't been that long, so I decided to just roll it into one video. So this movie is the third installment in the Home series, or the MCU Spider-Man movies, and it's also the sequel to Far From Home, and it's also the 9th Spider-Man movie.
9?
Or 10th, if you want to count the 70s Spider-Man movie, but whatever. Also, this is a sequel to, spoilers, I guess, it is a sequel to Spider-Man 3 and The Amazing Spider-Man 2, so that's all I'm gonna say. So we've been following the development of this movie ever since they announced it was a live-action Spider-Verse movie, and ever since Jamie Foxx posted that picture on his Instagram showing 3 Spider-Man and himself and saying, oh, I'm not gonna be blue in this anymore.
Yeah,
so.
that was like at the beginning of the year that he posted it, and then all of a sudden he just took it down.
Yeah, so after all the rumors and leaks, we were really excited to see this movie. Did it live up to the hype? Yes, in my opinion.
For me, I loved it. Don't get me wrong. I loved it. It just didn't reach my full expectations. But I loved it. As I said, up to now I keep replaying the clips over and over again.
Yeah, same here. And heck, I've been trying to find like bootleg versions online.
Of the full movie.
Yeah, even if the quality is not good, I still can see and understand what's going on in the movie.
As long as it's in English, whether or not if it has like foreign subtitles, he still will watch it.
Before we start, we're just gonna do a recap on the previous Spider-Man movies. We actually watched all the Spider-Man movies leading up to this movie, so personally, I think the first 2 Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies are still great comic book movies. I still think Spider-Man 3 is not as bad as everyone says, and personally, it's our favorite of the trilogy.
It's the movie that gave us all the Bully Maguire memes,
Heck,
all the memes of Spider-Man that we know. That's what Spider-Man 3 gave us.
Yeah, and we still enjoy it till this day. The web films, which I haven't seen in full since 2013 or 2014, and my sister hasn't seen any of those movies in full, only through clips, so I made her watch those movies with me when we were doing our Spider-Man marathon. Personally, for me, I think the first Amazing Spider-Man movie is okay, but it just had those repeats from the first Spider-Man movie. The second one has its moments, but it's still not good. But personally, I think my second viewing of The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is a lot better than my first viewing, which was back in 2014. I think maybe 2015, I don't know.
So after watching the 2 TASM films, I personally still don't really enjoy them all that much, but watching the second one especially, the one where Gwen falls and dies, I think it was good for me to watch that, so especially when leading up to this movie, it was a lot more meaningful.
Yeah. And then we get to the first 2 MCU Spider-Man movies, which I think Homecoming was good for its time. Looking back on it, it's not that bad, but it's still not good. Far From Home, which personally it's a mixed bag for me. There are some moments in that movie which I think is a lot better than in Homecoming.
I'm not a huge fan of the Home series, except only for this movie. Only because, I don't know, it feels like, I don't really feel like I'm watching Spider-Man when I watch it. I feel like I'm watching a high school teen romance or a rom-com from Netflix, like something that you would watch on Netflix. That's what I feel when I watch the Homecoming movies. I don't really feel like I'm watching Spider-Man, which is why, like, it's not because of just nostalgia that I feel more gravitated towards the original Spider-Man because it just feels like you're watching Spider-Man.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, that's just me.
We didn't watch Into the Spider-Verse because we were only focusing on the live-action Spider-Man movies. So we decided to just, not watch that. One more thing I do have to mention is that when we were going to watch this movie the day it was premiering, our screening, there was a technical problem going on.
Apparently, because my brother and I were going to get popcorn, it came out apparently as 3D.
And not the one we chose, which was
not 3D.
Yeah, so there was a big screw up there, and they literally had to rewind the movie twice now?
Yeah, because when they played the movie back, all of a sudden it stopped for a while, and then they had to do it again. And then thank God, throughout the entire thing, thankfully, it was running smooth and there was no problems after that.
Yeah, unlike when I watched Dragon Ball Super Broly, the first time, literally, when Goku was battling Broly, it turned pitch black.
Really?
Yeah. I think I told you that years ago, but it was so dumb. And they tried fixing it, but it didn't work, so they gave me a refund. And I got so pissed off that I couldn't watch the rest of the movie. But thank God with this, it did not happen again, just like with, my viewing with Dragon Ball Super. But they managed to play the whole thing without, accidentally rewinding or fast forwarding to spoilers.
Yeah,
So
that would have sucked.
Yeah.
So thank God that didn't happen.
So the movie starts off where Far From Home ended, where Mysterio reveals to the entire world that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. The whole world is against him. There are some people that are with him, but majority of the New Yorkers and the rest of the world are standing up for Mysterio. So Peter goes to Doctor Strange to pretty much reverse the spell, and what does he do? Parker literally screws up the spell, saying, oh, what about MJ? What about Ned? What about Aunt May? What about Happy? What about all the people? He literally screws up Doctor Strange's spell.
He just doesn't shut up as usual.
Yeah, as you saw in the trailers. So when that happens, the villains from the Sam Raimi movies and the Mark Webb movies come into the MCU. So we got Green Goblin, Doc Ock, Sandman, the Lizard, and Electro. So of course, Doctor Strange wants to bring all the villains back to their universes. But then Doctor Strange tells Holland's Peter that these villains died while fighting Spider-Man. But Thomas Peter sympathizes with them and doesn't want Strange to send them back. So he ends up taking the magic box. Before getting into spoilers, we're going to talk about the stuff that we did like. First off, the action or the fight scenes. Personally, I think this is probably one of the best fights we've had since the original Spider-Man movies. TASM also had some great fights, as well as the first two MCU Spider-Man movies. But personally, I think this is the best out of the three MCU Spider-Man movies. The way they choreographed these fights, they're really, really good. I really liked the fight with Spider-Man against Green Goblin. I also liked the bridge fight between Spider-Man and Doc Ock. The bridge fight was good, but it wasn't as good as the train fight in Spider-Man 2.
I personally liked how the acting improved, specifically the acting of the one who started her career with Disney. I also like the development of Tom's character and the Zendaya chick, whatever his character. While watching this movie, I feel that they've matured a lot more. They matured a lot in this movie and didn't have their former cringy personalities like they did in the other films.
Yeah.
Except for the part where they laugh at Doc Ock's name.
And the Scooby-Doo crap.
Yeah, that stupid, oh, please. Other than that, they've matured a lot in this film.
This movie made us like their characters, unlike with the previous two movies where we just rolled our eyes at Zendaya's performance in Homecoming and Far From Home, especially Far From Home.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of Zendaya, whatever her name is. But this movie made me actually like her and feel bad for her.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's because of her acting or if it's because how mature her character became and the entire character development. But this movie made me forget that I didn't like her.
Yeah. I mean, there were some scenes where I'm just like, ugh. But then I'm just throughout the whole movie. Now, another thing that we liked were the interactions with the villains. For instance, with Green Goblin and Doc Ock, because this is something that all of us wanted to see back in the day. What would Otto say to Norman if Norman Osborn were still alive in the Sam Raimi movies? Or Sandman talking to Electro, or Electro talking to the Lizard. Stuff like that, I really enjoyed those parts. One of the things I liked as compared to the first two are the visuals. The visuals look absolutely stunning as compared to Homecoming and Far From Home.
Although this movie is much darker compared to the other two movies, it still is visually striking to the eye.
The first act of this film is very lighthearted and quirky, but once it gets to the second and third act, things start to turn and get dark. I loved it.
Which is what makes it better than the first two Home movies. The first two movies are full of comic relief, whereas the third one is darker and makes you feel more connected to the characters.
Now for the bad, or the stuff that we didn't really like. For instance, how they handled, like, not really handled, but the screen time with Sandman and the Lizard. They were not really focused that well. Also, another thing, Thomas Hayden Church and Reese Ifans, I think that's how you pronounce it, were not present in the movie.
They were not there because of COVID. I honestly, I think it was because of COVID, not because that they couldn't make it or anything like that. I don't know.
However, they were able to do their voices for their monster forms. Another thing that I didn't like was, well, some shots. Like, the CG, mostly. I don't know what it is, but in every Spider-Man movie, like specifically the final battle in each Spider-Man movie, like the CG wasn't that good. Like with Spider-Man 3's final battle, the Amazing Spider-Man 2's final battle, I don't know what it is, but it's just, it doesn't look good.
Like, it seems like they were kind of lazy to edit the last parts of the CG.
Like, we did hear that before the release of this movie, some of the VFX weren't finished, but come on! Some of the CG of, like, the Spider-Man or even some of the villains, it looks like it was even finished. Like, I know it's like that with the other MCU movies or even, you know, the other Marvel movies, but come on! Like, it's not really a huge deal, but they do this every single Spider-Man movie.
It looks to the point, like, it looks like it's a game.
Yeah. One of the other things I did not like is Tom's Peter controls Doc Ock's arms via the Iron Spider suits.
One of the things that I didn't like was how they made the Raimi villains into complete jokes within the first act.
Yeah.
Like, the serious and sympathetic villains we knew and grew up with have been turned into complete comic reliefs.
Yeah, that's one of the other few things that I didn't really like. How they made the Raimi and Webb villains, especially the Raimi villains, into comedic jokes. Like, yeah, I know that's what the MCU Spider-Man movies are. Like, they made Vulture or Mysterio into kind of joke villains because, oh, Tony Stark fired me or he made fun of my work. Stuff like that. I didn't like how they put in the Raimi villains and some of the Webb villains, especially with Dr. Connors. There was also one character that didn't really interact with another character, which was a huge missed opportunity. I think you know who I'm talking about, right? So, yeah, that was a huge missed opportunity. But let's just get into spoilers, because I really want to talk about the spoilers.
Yeah,
so, if you guys have not watched the movie,
end the video right here, or just don't watch this video anymore.
Or just watch the movie, but stay away from clips. That's all I'm gonna say.
Try your best. They're everywhere, so try your best.
Yeah, because I really want to talk about the parts that I wanted to say in this video.
That everyone wanted to see in this movie.
So, first off, Andrew Garfield is a freaking liar.
I don't know how to bring up the Spider-Man stuff because obviously I don't even want to like ruin anything if there is something to ruin, except to
there isn't anything to ruin, bro.
I have to just quickly just cut you off. There's nothing to ruin.
I feel like I'm in a game of fucking werewolf or mafia where I'm like, I'm not the werewolf.
As of this taping, in or have any knowledge of being in the next Spider-Man movie?
I feel like I feel like I haven't I just said that?
I just want to get really clear. This is the unequivocal yes/no answer.
I did not get a call.
I heard about it, and I did see it, and it's a Photoshop.
We say no.
I'm trying to manage expectations. You say no. Oh, you say no. Yeah.
Like, all the leaks that they showed on social media, they're true.
They're real. Except for the part where the guy says that he made that thing with Andrew, like with his arm on the bar. That was not true. That guy was only doing that for clout. Those Toby audio clips, those weren't real.
Yeah, where he said, you both have web shooters, or on my world Octavius died.
It was kind of obvious because the way he said it was like weird pitches and like it was kind of bland.
Yeah,
That's not it was obvious that that one was fake.
Yeah, like at first I'm like, oh my gosh, but then I found out later on like someone just used a Tobey Maguire voice emulator or whatever. But the way they introduced them in this movie, I got so
mind blowing.
Yeah, I mean it was kind of an odd choice that Ned summons them via portal, because I imagined it how I'm pretty sure everyone imagined it, that Tom's Peter was getting beaten by the Sinister Six and he's almost dead, or like
he's getting weaker and weaker
until Webb starts showing up, and then you see Toby and Andrew. That's how I imagined it.
Yeah, I think that was like an option for them to show up. Like I feel like they had a bunch of options to show how they would show up, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I think honestly, I like how they brought them in like this.
Yeah.
Like it's not how I expected it, but it was nice too because it built up the tension, and then all of a sudden, like we kind of knew right when the spark came up. At first I didn't know that it was Ned doing it. I just thought someone was trying to get in.
Yeah.
And like it sounded like a web shooting sound, and like the way that they came in and how the audience reacted to how they came in it was
the greatest thing I've ever experienced. I think like the theater experience while we were watching is a lot better than when we watch Avengers Endgame and Infinity War. Because Infinity War, when they were all dusted, no reaction, just like I heard a few gasps.
Considering the fact that we live in Canada, Canadians aren't like, we're not as loud, wild, and excited as Americans are for like reactions, but this time our audience was very active and like they were very receptive with everything going on in the theater.
Yeah.
So like, you know the part where Green Goblin shows up on the bridge? I accidentally cheered too early because I didn't know he was gonna get cut off. I'm like, yeah! Oh, where did he go?
And as I was saying, back to Avengers, where in Infinity War, like the scene where they all got dusted, nobody gave it a reaction as compared to America. People were like, and people were crying.
They're like, no!
And when Endgame came out, when they all came back to join the fight, here everyone was just clapping, and I heard a few woos and cheering, but it wasn't enough. Until this, everyone jumped out of their seats.
Not really jumped out of their seats. Well, yeah, kind of.
Like when Andrew ran through the portal and took off his mask, everyone lost their shit. But then when Toby came,
like, oh my gosh, the cheering would not stop until like 2 minutes after, like when Toby was like talking to Ned's Lola.
Yeah.
Or not talking, but like interacting with Ned's Lola when Toby and Andrew come in, and then Ned's Lola starts speaking to him in Filipino, and then he's like translating it. In the theaters, like when she was speaking in Filipino, all the Filipinos were laughing without Ned having to translate it, obviously, because what she was saying, like if you understand Filipino, what she was saying it was really funny. My mom was even laughing. Her favorite character in this movie, this entire movie, is Lola.
Legit. I even asked her, so what's your favorite part of the movie, Mom? Oh,
and then she's like, Lola.
I'm just like, oh, not Toby or Andrew?
Well, she liked them too. She was so happy that the man that her kids grew up watching reprised his role as Spider-Man.
But yeah, it was great seeing them again. And for all you multiverse deniers, you just took a big L. Because whoever thought Toby and Andrew weren't going to be in this movie, you need some help. Another reaction that surprised everyone was the Matt Murdock cameo, which I was really excited to see him in the MCU finally, because his shows, along with the other Netflix Marvel shows, were not canon. So to see him and the Kingpin in Hawkeye is just awesome to see.
I didn't watch those Daredevil shows.
Same
the only
here.
Daredevil I know is Ben Affleck. Like, I watched him when I was really young. Like, Ben Affleck and Jennifer Garner as Elektra. That's the one I know. So I wasn't really excited when I saw the new Daredevil on screen. I was like, oh, Daredevil, wow.
And I really liked the part where someone throws a brick at Peter and Aunt May's apartment, and he grabs the brick and he's just like...
He catches it.
Yeah.
They're like questioning him. They're like, how'd you do that? And they're like, oh, I'm just a good lawyer.
Yeah.
Like, That doesn't explain anything, but okay.
I really like the chemistry between Toby, Andrew, and Tom, especially when they're inside the lab. It just brought back memories.
I feel like everyone was smiling every time there was like a scene with all three of them, or like when any of the first two Spider-Men showed up on screen. I feel like everyone was just watching the screen smiling because it was all quiet. Every time there was an interaction between them, everyone was just quiet, and like throughout the entire time everyone was quiet until all the goosebump parts.
Yeah, like I really liked when Ned goes up to Tobey Maguire's Peter and asks him if he has a best friend, and he said he did. And oh my gosh,
Like,
he
the
mentions
look on his
Harry.
face. Like, he doesn't specifically say Harry, but like he mentions how Harry died
Yeah,
in his
and
arms.
he tried to kill him.
Like, he kind of stopped after like Ned mentioned his best friend. It's like all those flashbacks came back to him, and then he just remembered, and then he felt so sad. But like Ned's reaction was kind of he's like, I don't want to die too.
But that part literally gave me goosebumps. It teared me up a little. And the part where Andrew looks at MJ, Zendaya's character, and Tom's Peter, and Toby asks him, do you have someone in your life? And he's just like, nah, I'm too busy with Peter Parker stuff. Andrew asks if he does, and he's like, yeah, but it's complicated. And he finally settled his relationship with Mary Jane, which...
Well, not really settled, since he said it was complicated.
Yeah,
but he did say that they always try to work things out.
But I'm also wondering if he got married to Mary Jane and had a kid.
I think so. I think that they did get married, because even in a marriage, things can be complicated.
Yeah,
But
as we saw in Into the Spider-Verse, where Peter B. Parker and Mary Jane got married, but then they...
divorced.
Yeah.
I don't stick that to Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst, Peter and MJ, because that's a completely different... Although there are references to that movie and their relationship,
Yeah.
I don't consider that as their relationship. It's just an idea for Into the Spider-Verse. But anyway...
I really love their chemistry between the three, especially when they're on the Statue of Liberty.
Oh gosh,
like
yeah.
they're talking about Toby's organic webs because, well, Andrew and Tom's Peter
They have
Parker
web
have
shooters.
yeah, they have web shooters. Which, yes, we are aware that in the original drafts for the first Spider-Man movie, he did have web shooters, but
However, like, it was just to help the organic webs shoot out better, I guess, because like when you're wearing the costume and then gloves, how's it supposed to come out? But I guess they made it work, I guess.
I don't know, but it was a deleted scene, and for some reason they never made it into the deleted
Which
scenes.
is fine. I don't really, like, I don't mind so much that they took out the web shooters. I think it's cool either way, whether he has web shooters or not, and I think it's better that it came out, like, just from his wrist itself.
Yeah, personally, we prefer organic web than web shooters.
Yeah, it's a lot more convenient, and you don't have to keep refilling it, and what's the point in being bit by a spider and getting its powers without having like all of its characteristics of shooting out webs that came from its body?
Yeah. But at the same time, I do find web shooters fascinating, but I still prefer organic webs. And that leaked video of Andrew Garfield that we saw back in August, yeah, that's obviously real.
Yeah, it's not Photoshop.
And he said, did you have a web block? Not, so you have web blood. Which a lot of people, including us, thought it was.
I mean, it was close enough though.
Yeah. And Toby even mentions his web block situation from Spider-Man 2.
Yeah, like during their conversation, Andrew said, have you ever had a web block? And then Toby's face was like, oh yeah, I did. And then he recalls his web block situation that he had during Spider-Man 2.
Another scene that made me smile was when the villains are in Doctor Strange's underground basement thing. Willem Dafoe says, I'm something of a scientist myself. Everyone just
like
cheered and laughed in the
majority
theater.
of the references are coming from the original Spider-Man movies, because I feel like they have the most memes out of like all the other Spider-Men.
Yeah.
Because the ones who like said the most references were the Raimi Spider-Man cast.
Yeah.
So that's like Green Goblin, Doc Ock, Tobey Maguire. Like all of them said their lines from the previous movies.
Exactly. Like the power of the sun in the palm of my hand.
Which was, I feel like when Doc Ock said that, it was kind of overused. He said it like 5 times throughout the movie, I think. And Tobey's Peter somehow knows it. When in the movie, Doc Ock only said it to himself under his breath.
Like like when
Like,
they're on
okay,
the
we
bridge
get it.
and when they're on the Statue of Liberty.
He could have just said it like one time or two times.
One of the other references that made me smile is when Thomas Peter talking to the other two Spideys. What are the craziest villains you guys fought? Toby's Peter mentions that he fought an alien made out of black goo, of course referencing Venom. And Tom also mentions that he also fought an alien from space and on Earth, of course referencing to Thanos.
But then Andrew feels like left out. He's like, I want to fight an alien. Because all he's ever fought were these guys from New York.
One of the scenes that almost made me cry, but she cried, is the death of Aunt May.
Oh my gosh. I felt so terrible for Tom. Like, I don't like Tom's Peter because he's such a baby. I hope none of you, like, get mad at me for saying this, but, like, I've called him a loser a couple of times.
Look at little Iron Boy Jr. Gonna cry?
Just because he wasn't so independent and he was always relying on other people.
Yeah.
And all he cared about was some girl. But like after Aunt May died, I was crying because I was like, who's gonna watch over Tom now? Who's gonna take care of him? Like I was thinking Happy, that he would move in with Happy, but because Uncle Ben died for him.
His parents.
His parents, and now Aunt May. Now he has no family except for Happy.
And I kind of knew it was going to be Aunt May because there were some reports saying, oh, there was
Gonna be a death in the film.
Yeah. So I wasn't really too sure if it was going to be her because we thought it was going to be MJ because...
I thought it was gonna be her because she fell, or either Happy because we don't really see him throughout the rest of the trailer. So
it was either Happy, MJ, or someone else.
and like, you know in the trailer where Tom says it's all his fault, I thought that was like after Happy dies. And
But
stuff like
turns
that.
out
But
it was
it's
Aunt May.
May.
And that scene literally reminded me of her death in the PS4 game. But I think with this one affected me more. Not to say that the PS4 death of Aunt May didn't
Wasn't
affect me.
sad.
Yeah. Both were sad. Another spoiler that we have to mention is Michelle Jones. MJ's last name is... You guessed it.
Watson.
Yeah.
I was so hoping that it wasn't gonna be Watson, because then that means that would make room for a real Mary Jane Watson, but no. This is the Mary Jane Watson in this universe. Like, I kind of knew it, but I was like denying it.
Same.
But turns out she's like, oh, I don't use Watson, I use Jones.
Yeah, and like oh my gosh. That just literally
What happened to you
gave
and your
me the
mom?
biggest facepalm ever in the theater.
And then when they were like introducing MJ, like Michelle to Norman Osborn, like when they came in the lair, he was like, Mary Jane? And then they're just like, no,
Michelle
Michelle.
Jones. I'm just like, oh.
I was just like,
MJ and I, we're gonna have a hell of a time.
They also reference another line from the Raimi movies where Goblin is heading towards the Statue of Liberty and says, Can the Spider-Man come out to play? Literally is a reference to the first movie where he's talking to Toby on the phone in the hospital. He was like, Can Spider-Man come out to play? I was just like, I didn't even notice that at first until
I noticed.
After like watching the clips, I'm just like, oh.
Like seeing Toby's face, like he's just like that voice. Right when Green Goblin comes and then he turns around and then he says that line.
During the fight with Goblin, both times, Thomas Peter did similar moves to Spider-Man PS4. First time when he was battling Kingpin, and second are like finishers. And I noticed that right away. I'm like, oh, that's the same from the PS4 game.
So once the other two came out, like Toby, like my eyes were just stuck on Toby. That's literally the only reason why I came to watch this film was Toby and Andrew and the villains. Not really because of Tom and the others, like...
It was mostly the multiverse villains and Toby and Andrew. Another spoiler is that when Doctor Strange is holding the dimensions, we see silhouettes of Kraven the Hunter, the Rhino, and Scorpion. And a couple of other villains, but the only ones that I saw were Rhino, Kraven, and Scorpion. There are two more things that I want to talk about for the spoiler part. There is a lot more that I want to talk about, but the video is going to be too long. But the first one is when Thomas Peter is about to kill Goblin with his own glider.
Oh,
Toby steps in and stops him. I'm just like,
Like
oh my
the
gosh.
face, just like they didn't even have to exchange any words.
Yeah.
Just them looking at each other, and then he's like telling him with his eyes, like, no. This is
isn't
not
the
like
way.
I made this mistake. Don't do this. This is not the way. He probably thought about how his Aunt May told him that Spider-Man doesn't kill people.
Yeah, that revenge is like a poison that
Yeah.
can take you over.
Yeah.
And like that whole fight scene at the end with him beating the shit out of Goblin just reminded me of the first one. Like, oh my gosh.
Like,
the reference every single time in this movie. Like,
yeah. Like, we knew that he was gonna, like, beat the crap out of somebody in this movie because of full-on rage. Like,
Yeah.
I think a lot of people predicted that this would happen and that Toby would step in and stop him. Specifically Toby.
Yeah.
Like, Toby's Peter, because, like, he's the first one, so he's basically, like, the father figure, not really father figure,
but the
like,
older brother of
Yeah, like
the
the-
three Spider-Man.
yeah.
And after he puts on the glider, there was a moment that literally shocked us.
shocked everyone.
Yeah. Toby gets stabbed. I'm just like, don't do this to my childhood. Don't kill
I
him
got
off.
so mad. I'm just like, why are you gonna do this? But thank God that it was just a fake out. Well, not really a fake out, but like it was just to play with us.
Yeah.
Because he got stabbed before. He even said he's like, no, I'm fine. I got stabbed before.
Yeah. So I was so relieved. Everyone was relieved that Toby didn't die.
That he was fine.
Yeah. Because I'm like, wait a minute. He got stabbed by Harry, so...
Yeah, I guess it wasn't really stabbed, but like it was right here, and it was pretty deep. That knife was pretty deep in his side.
Yeah.
Like below his stomach.
I was just like very scared that they were gonna kill off Toby.
Yeah,
If they were
I
gonna
would
kill
have
off
gotten
Toby,
so mad.
yeah, I would have walked out the theater
Yeah, I'm like, bye.
being disappointed. But
But
thank God,
thank
the
God.
movie was like getting good.
They know what they were doing.
Yeah.
They knew that if they killed off any of the Spider-Man, like, it wouldn't have been as successful as it is now.
Another scene that we really loved is Toby mentions his back, and Andrew helps him out with that.
It's really nice to see the two Spider-Men who we thought was gonna be like a huge feud. Like in the beginning, like they were, like we thought that they were gonna have like some sort of feuding thing because that's how it was like in real life. When Andrew was announced to be the new Spider-Man at the time, and us Raimi fans who grew up with Toby at the time and those who liked Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man at the time, as we were feuding, we thought that they would be feuding if they would ever meet. But just seeing them together in that one scene, like sweet to each other, especially when Toby kind of gives his blessing to Andrew by calling him amazing, that was really heartwarming. Like even Andrew's Peter said that he really needed to hear that because it's like he needed the validation that he was a good enough Spider-Man.
I also really liked how, since Doc Ock was cured early on, I liked how he helped out Toby and Andrew cure Electro and fought Goblin with the help of Doctor Strange. Because if you guys remember, he redeemed himself at the end of Spider-Man 2, so it would make sense for him to help out. While Andrew's Peter's talking to Electro, he thought that Andrew's Spider-Man was going to be black, and he also says that there's got to be a black Spider-Man somewhere, of course referring to Miles Morales.
Which caused a huge outroar in the theaters.
One of the other scenes that made us smile, especially me, was Peter and Otto reunite, and it was a touching scene.
Just hearing the first two Spider-Man's theme song play as they speak to their second movie villains, it was so heartwarming and nostalgic. Like, no words can describe how everyone was feeling during those moments.
Also, Andrew gets redemption and saves MJ, which a lot of people were speculating or not if he was going to be the one to save MJ, if not Thomas Peter.
I also thought that Toby's Peter would save Ned when he falls, but I guess they just wanted more comic relief for Ned and just made Doctor Strange's cape catch him instead, which was funny, but I would have preferred Toby catching Ned instead of Toby catching
Dr. Connors. Also, that would pretty much give him redemption for not saving Harry.
However, he didn't really have a way to save Harry since he was all tied up with Venom's goo, but it still would have been a heartwarming moment if Toby saved Ned.
But it was nice to see Andrew getting redemption after not saving Gwen.
Especially when he asks her if she's okay, and she answers that she is, which brought him to tears, as if he remembered asking Gwen if she was okay, however not answering due to the fact that she died.
Now the last thing that we want to talk about for the spoiler, the spell does work Doctor Strange wipes out everyone's memory of Peter being Spider-Man, and it's such a sad and depressing scene to watch.
This is like the very first time that I felt bad for Tom Holland, like as Spider-Man, because he, as all of them literally said in all of the interviews, that it's a dark film. He loses everything and everyone that he loves, and at the end, like I felt so terrible for him because he's all alone. He doesn't have Aunt May anymore. He doesn't even have Happy. He doesn't have his best friend, which honestly, this entire thing doesn't make sense for me because at first it says they're just gonna forget that he was Spider-Man. Like, they don't know his identity. It did not say that they're gonna completely forget about him. So that part, I don't really like that part, like that whole idea, because it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Like when he was saying his goodbyes, which there was another scene where he hugs both Tobey and Andrew, which puts a smile on my face.
That's the most heartwarming one.
And whoever made that fan-made poster of the 3 Spider-Men hugging, it became legit, and I was so surprised. Another thing, before we get to the final, like, part of the spoiler, they do the meme of the pointing of the Spider-Man twice.
2 times.
Yeah, when they're in the laboratory, when Ned calls out Peter, and he's like,
and they all respond. They're like me. Oh, him? No.
Yeah, and then the second time is when they're coming up with the plan to cure the villains.
Yeah, Peter 1, Peter 2, Peter 3, whatever.
Yeah, and the shot of the 3 of them on top of the Statue of Liberty, that just made me smile.
Yeah, I like how they let Tobey land first, and then Andrew, and then Tom. I really like that part.
That is something that I would like to put up on my walls.
One thing I do have to nitpick about, like, it's not that it matters, but it would have been a lot more epic if they mashed up their theme songs together during that part where they're flying off the Statue of Liberty to fight the villains. Like, they're just swinging together, just the 3 of them all together. I was hoping, like, all of their, like, theme songs would be mashed up together during that part. It would have been so much better.
Yeah.
I'm planning to make an edit of that myself, although there is a lot of those.
Which they do play their themes, which I was so happy they played the Danny Elfman theme and the James Horner theme. I don't know why they didn't use Hans Zimmer's theme for Andrew, but I think the James Horner theme, aka the Amazing Spider-Man 1 theme, fits more with Andrew than the second one.
Honestly, I think it's more on rights, that's why.
Of course, they also played the themes for the villains, like Doc Ock, Green Goblin, Sandman, Electro. I don't know about the Lizard, because the Lizard's theme is not that memorable.
Like, I don't know what the Lizard sounds like either.
Yeah.
But I was so happy when I heard all of their themes, mostly the ones that we grew up with.
And last but not least, at the end of the film, Tom's Peter moves into a crappy apartment, which is, of course, referencing how Tobey lived in a crappy apartment in Spider-Man 2 and 3. And we feel so bad for him that he has to live in a crappy apartment. He's all alone.
He has to start all over again. He has to figure things out himself, which is good because he finally becomes, like, he grows out of the Iron Boy Jr. phase into actual Spider-Man.
Yeah, not Spider-Boy, not Iron Boy Jr., whatever. He finally becomes Spider-Man in this movie. It took them how many movies
for him to actually become a man?
Yeah, which I was so happy to see. Another thing that he does, he makes his own suits.
Yeah,
which
I really like.
Yeah.
It's very similar to the comics, and I like the material he used.
And I like how he got his inspiration from both Tobey and Andrew's suits. So he's just like, okay, so that's how they do it.
He's just like, okay, so I like this part on Tobey's, I like this part on Andrew's, I want to put that together and make it my own.
And then we get to the mid-credits and the post-credit scene. For those who have not seen Venom Let There Be Carnage, then you should know that Eddie Brock and Venom cross over to the MCU.
For some reason.
Yeah, so with the mid-credit scene, it shows, of course, Eddie and Venom still in Mexico, and they're talking to a bartender, and the bartender tells them about the Avengers, and he's just like, so there's a flying guy, and there's a green guy. Like, you would think Eddie Brock and Venom from the Venom movies would stay in the MCU, but since the spell worked, they go back to the Venomverse.
Yeah.
But
they leave a little glop of venom on the table.
So what I'm hoping in the next film, which yes, MCU Spider-Man 4 is going to happen.
I hope so.
Yeah. as of this recording, Marvel and Sony has announced they're doing a Spider-Man 4 with Tom Holland. I really hope so.
Yeah, the only reason, like, I would watch it, the only reason because I don't want to see Tom's Spider-Man end that way. Although he did say that he wanted to take a break from acting, which is fine. Just as long as he comes back, because it's so tragic how it ended, and if it just ends like that, it's not, that would be really depressing.
Yeah.
Just to see if he's okay. If he's okay, then I'm good with that.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that they're gonna introduce characters like Gwen Stacy,
Oh,
Harry
yeah.
Osborn,
Yeah.
and like since this next movie will be in his college years,
Like, maybe, like, I feel like, because a lot of people were saying that Ned would become Hobgoblin, but I don't
Yeah.
think so. I honestly don't think that's a good
route to go with.
Yeah, even though Ned dated Betty Brant, I feel like once, a thought just came into my mind, like, since now Tom's Peter has to start over, he's gonna apply to the Daily Bugle maybe, where Betty is now working, and then they suddenly become closer, and since Betty Brant is one of Peter Parker's love interests, maybe I feel that they might develop something, even though she did go out with Ned, so he'll probably feel bad. I don't know, that's what I think. I don't know. Could be, could not.
Also, I don't really want to see him and Ned fight. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
yes, like in the previous movies, we did have Peter battling Harry in Spider-Man 3 and TASM 2, but something with this that I just don't
Yeah.
really want to see yet.
No one wants to see Ned and Tom's Peter fight because they're too good of friends to be, you know. Oh, and also considering the fact that they're not friends anymore after this,
so
that's something to think about for the next movie.
I'm just hoping that all the things that people are speculating on come into this fourth movie.
Yeah.
Because
a lot of things that people thought about, like, prior for the multiverse, for the next Spider-Man movie, was for it to become a Spider-Verse movie.
yeah.
So hopefully something that people are thinking about now comes into the fourth movie.
Yeah. And like even prior to the third movie, people were speculating what the third movie could be. It could be Kraven's Last Hunt or Spider-Verse movie. I'm glad that they chose this live-action Spider-Verse movie.
Yeah.
And of course, last thing is the post-credit scene, which is a teaser trailer for Doctor Strange 2, which I thought it was okay, but we'll see what the official trailer has in store, because with all the rumors again and leaks, I'm really excited to see this movie as well.
Yeah, because apparently Patrick Stewart is going to come back as Professor X in this.
Yeah, and there's going to be a shit ton of cameos from the Fox X-Men movies, the Fox Fantastic Four movies.
I just found out about that.
And Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool's going to be in there. Apparently he's going to have a funny cameo in this. There's going to be a lot of cameos in this. And I'm just hoping that Toby's Peter and Andrew's Peter make a cameo in this as well. Like, oh, hey, Doctor Strange.
Wait, that wouldn't really make sense if the both of them... I feel like there would be, like, if not, like, a personal cameo, I feel like there would just be, like, a poster like there was in Morbius.
Yeah. And speaking of Morbius, that's another movie which I'm kind of looking forward to, but at the same time I'm just like, nah. Because it's Morbius. So to bring it all together, I really like the action, the character development, the returning cast members, just everything that I liked about this movie. But this movie is not perfect. This movie is not the best Spider-Man movie. To me, the best Spider-Man movie is still Spider-Man 2.
Yeah. Honestly, don't get me wrong, I love that they came back and they had all these interactions, everything, like everything about it I like. I just wish they had longer screen time, and that the way that they left this movie, it wasn't very satisfying. Like, they just like faded away along with their villains. I was so hoping that it was just the villains first, and then Toby and Andrew would go back when Doctor Strange just sends them back. Like, they would go out for pizza, stuff like that.
They missed an opportunity.
A total opportunity to bring in the pizza joke, but I guess
since this was during COVID, I guess they couldn't really figure out for them to part ways. But overall, I just love everything that this movie did. For me, I personally rank it, since we watched it like more than once now at the time of this recording. I actually watched it twice now, but with all the clips that we've been watching, it's technically our third watch, but I'm very excited to see the behind the scenes and the bloopers especially for this movie.
Oh yeah, like the interview that I'm looking most forward to, like that panel thing with the villains, the 3 villains. I'm waiting for the 3 Spider-Man panel.
Yeah,
if they made one, I'm totally looking forward for that. Even the Google autocomplete thing, I'm waiting for them to do that. Like, and you know how Tobey Maguire laughs like really easily? Like he's like a kid who laughs so easily. I'm waiting for like a moment with them 3 doing that together if they ever do make one.
Hopefully.
So
personally for me, I would rank this movie. When I first watched it, I gave it a 9.5 out of 10. But I think I would probably give it an 8.5 to 9 out of 10.
Yeah, same. I give it 8 out of 10.
I would probably rank it under Spider-Man 2 or Into the Spider-Verse. It just depends on my watch list.
Don't get us wrong, we love the movie.
Yeah.
Like, for me, it would come, like, 4th underneath the 3 Raimi films.
And this movie made me appreciate Andrew's and Tom's Spider-Man even more than what I used to before, because when I started like finding out about the Amazing Spider-Man movies like back in 2012 through like 2014 or 2015,
he literally boycotted those movies because it's not Tobey.
Yeah, like as you've seen in my older videos, I'm just like, oh, blah, 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 blah. Like I get it.
Yeah. I was the same. I did not like Andrew's Spider-Man at all, but now after watching this movie, like I was judging people, like especially the girls who preferred TASM Spider-Man over like Raimi's Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Because they only liked him for his looks. But now that I watched No Way Home, I think Andrew's hot too.
And also, out of the 3 Spider-Man,
people were saying that Andrew was the most charismatic Spider-Man out of all the entire 3.
Yeah.
Maybe because he's the tallest and his facial expressions were like, they're really good.
And like you can tell, like even when he was doing his own movies, he really loves the character. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
although he was getting a bit of inspiration from Tobey's Spider-Man, but he also managed to make the character his own.
Yeah. And for Tom, like although I didn't like him at first, and there are some problems with his Spider-Man, this made me like him even more
than before.
Yeah. And all the jokes about him, calling him Iron Boy Jr.
Should never for you said those things.
But after watching No Way Home, this made me appreciate Andrew and Tom's, not just their Spider-Man, but their movies, which at first I didn't really like TASM, but now after rewatching them again and after No Way Home, I'm just like, oh wow, they're actually not bad and they're good in their own way. Same thing with like Homecoming and Far From Home. Even though I have problems with that as well, I still like appreciate them more than what I did before.
For me, it's only TASM that I appreciated more. But the only time where I appreciate Tom's Spider-Man is this movie.
Yeah.
Because you really feel for every single one of the characters here. A lot of people say that Tom's Spider-Man movies don't have character development. This is the only movie. You really feel that you have a connection towards each of the characters in this movie.
Exactly. Although this movie heavily relies on fan service, which for us it's not really a huge deal because we like stuff like this and we don't really mind it as much.
I feel like that's the whole reason of this film is for fan service, and that's why it got so popular and became so big, because of all of the nostalgia that it brought to everyone who grew up with Tobey and Andrew and all the other villains. And the fact that they're all together in one movie is another reason why this movie was so successful, is because of all the fan service that it had within the movie.
Also, this movie pretty much serves as the 20th anniversary for the first Spider-Man movie. But what are you guys' thoughts and opinions on Spider-Man No Way Home? Do you like it? Do you think it's okay? Do you think it's the worst Spider-Man movie? Let me guys know in the comments down below. And of course, make sure you guys check out and subscribe to my sister's YouTube channel. Links, of course, will be in the description below. So until next time, guys, I'll see you all in the next video. Peace.